Inspired Talks, Pranam Mantra. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Sachet Sukha Swarupaya Swami Netapaharine. Today we begin with Swamiji's talks on Sunday, June 30th. So we have been covering topic after topic and ideas after ideas. Just sorry. Normally, when it comes to wisdom, the wisdom that we acquire, now we are not talking about only about information or knowledge. We are talking about wisdom. Wisdom normally comes to us through three different sources. First of them is the sacred scriptures. For the Hindus, it's the Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, etc. And the second one comes from the commentators, the acharyas like Shankaracharya. And the third one comes from the philosophers. Normally, this idea of philosopher, it was not in India. Philosopher means independent thinker who goes on working through the arguments to reach a conclusion. Now, this is a Western concept, and we in India, we don't rely on these philosophers because today your mind will say something, tomorrow your mind will say something, and we don't know what is right, what is wrong. A superior mind will come and contradict what earlier has been told. Those of you who are slightly interested in philosophy would know that Bertrand Russell was a great philosopher, really a great philosopher. And he wanted to prove once and for all the ultimate of reasoning. So he decided to go on mathematical logic. It's a huge subject. Personally, I don't understand much of them. After all, I'm neither a student of philosophy nor I am interested in that. So now he got this worldwide fame. And then came great mathematician Gödel, and he proved mathematically that basically what Bertrand Russell is trying to do is a contradiction. So when you are within a system, you cannot prove that it is consistent. To prove that it is consistent, you have to come out of that system. So staying within the confines of mathematical logic, you cannot say that this is consistent. He proved it logically, so famously known as Gödel's second theorem. So, but then philosophers have helped us advance our knowledge and wisdom. Greek philosophers like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, they really helped the world advance. They made mistakes, no doubt about it, but they helped us. So if we don't want to have this word philosophers, we can have thinkers, savants. In India, we did not really give much value to them because for us, the ultimate spiritual truth was the most important thing. So either there were the scriptures or there were the commentators. But anyway, taking the entire world, we can say that these are the three. There are thinkers, philosophers, and there are the commentators, and there are the sacred scriptures. Interesting thing about Swami Vivekananda is that he's all three rolled into one. Often we don't realize this thing. Often we don't realize. Just to give you an example, I'll just give you two quotes. First one is, education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. Those of you who are even slightly disposed towards Swamiji's quotations would know. There is a very famous quotation by Swamiji where he talks about education. Now, this quotation itself comes from the ancient wisdom, sa vidya ya vimuktaye. Knowledge is that which frees you. Now, Swamiji translates it, interprets it, and makes it suitable for the present age. So when we are talking about education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man, it is no more savidyaya bhimukte. This is a statement coming from a sage. Well, that is Veda. Sorry. So just like that, in fact, that famous arise, awake, and stop, not till the goal is reached. It's straight from Uttishthata Jagat Prapya Varanya Bodhat. But that mantra from Kathopanishad has its limits, where Upanishad is talking about the journey towards spirituality. When Swamiji says, arise, awake, and stop, not till the goal is reached, this becomes for everyone. And he is the sage, he is the rishi who came up with this wisdom. Similarly, we find that at many places like Raj Yoga, when those of you who might have been listening to our talks on Raj Yoga, he's a commentator. And in Inspired Talks, you find all three rolled into one. He's giving up new philosophical systems. He's giving us enough material to build a new philosophy upon. So he is commentator. He's also a rishi, prophet. His words are the Vedas. And he's also a thinker. That is what makes a book like Inspired Talks extremely difficult and extremely crucial. Those of you who may not be knowing Bengali will know that we started the Bengali version of this book in 2017, and we continued with that for nearly 1.5 years and covered the talk in 109 lectures. Most lectures were of more than 1 hour. Now there is one Sri Amit Rai Chaudhary ji. He has been transcribing my talks, and they are all available on archive.org. The entire talk has come in more than 1,000 pages of A4 size. 1,000 pages, just such a small book. Even then, there were occasions when I felt that I was going too fast. And Sri Amit Rai Chaudhary ji, he used to edit and delete all the normal talks that we used to have in the class. Even after that, it's more than 1,000 pages. And I felt that I have not really done full justice. Maybe I should have added at least 100 or 200 pages to that. Not more than that, of course. Now, when we are going through all this, we need to be extra careful, and we need to be extremely attentive to understand what Swamiji is trying to tell. So on June 30th, he begins with, to try to think without a phantasm is to try to make the impossible possible. We cannot think mammalia. Mammalia is mammal species without a concrete example. Like every time you think of mammal, either you think of a cow or an elephant or a human being, something like that. This is what Swamiji means to say. So with the idea of God, the great abstraction of ideas in the world is what we call God. Now see, when you use this particular sentence, the great abstraction of ideas in the world is what we call God. See, this is a quotable quote. And in Inspired Talks, we shall be coming across many quotable quotes. Like after a while, Swamiji will say, if you don't allow a person to become a lion, he will become fox. It's amazing. And when I first read that sentence, I felt as if it was for me. And I have always tried not to be a fox, but a lion. These are quotable quotes. These are not only quotable quotes, these are the fundamental truths of existence that Swamiji bears before us. Now, this sentence, the great abstraction, which I mentioned just now, and when taken together with the earlier sentence, short paragraph, where Swamiji is talking about phantasm. Phantasm, he means something solid. We need to explain this. We live in the world of words, or you can say in the ocean of words. Whatever enters us thereby means of words, words and expressions. And we are so deep into it that we forget that when initially we were learning things, we only knew the idea. Words came later. Even for a baby, for example, for a baby, absolutely new baby, mom is just a food source. The baby knows that I can have my food from this source. And it's much later that the baby realized that this food source is to be called by the word mom. And suddenly that food source becomes mom. As we evolve, the ideas keep changing. Mom means many more things after that. Similarly, papa means many more things. When we say many more things, all those many more things are coined in one single word, papa, mama, or whatever we are talking. So ultimately, we find that there are two things. There's an idea, which is abstraction, and there is also a word. There can be many sources of food, but mom is one. There can be many sources of protection and guardians and guardianship, but papa is one. See, ideas, which is abstraction, and the words, these are absolutely two different things, and yet these are related. And because these ideas and expressions are related, words and ideas are related, this creates a lot of confusion in our minds. Believe me, my dear listeners, if you go deep into it, if you go deep into thinking, you will realize that a lot of mess is created in our life simply because we keep on confusing between words and ideas. I'll tell you a joke. I read it long ago in Reader's Digest. There was a college student, and he used to complain that when he was at home, he would always keep on throwing his clothes around. And his mom would pick up those clothes and say, I'm not a maid, I'm your mom. Then he went to college and university, and there, for the first time, he was staying in a hostel and he was doing the same thing. And there was a maid to look after this, to clean the house and all. And seeing those clothes lying around, the maid would say, I'm not your mom, I'm only a maid. So that boy had written it funny. So he says, when I was at home, my mom used to say, I'm mom, not your maid, that I'll pick up your clothes. And the maid says, I'm a maid, not your mom. See, the idea is someone who picks up your clothes. Who is that person? Person who takes care. And the person who takes care is an idea. It can be mom, it can be maid. The words are changing. So what happens sometimes we transfer the idea contained in a word on some other word. So the words are not as compartmentalized as we might think. There are many words for the same idea. Again, there are many ideas connected with the same word. So often we get confused and we tend to transfer, or rather transference, the word is transference. We make a transference of words to different ideas and ideas to different words, which creates a lot of mess and confusion in our daily life. But when it comes to religion and spirituality, there's a total chaos. Why? We mentioned Plato and Aristotle. Aristotle was deep into objectivism. For him, object was the supreme. Later on in Western philosophy, we find lots of words like objectivism and realism, and there are many more words. I find it so confusing because they all mean nearly the same thing with slight different connotations. There's a very famous novel The Fountainhead by our this I'm just forgetting the name suddenly. This so that novel and Atlas Shrugged. Ayn Rand. Her novels are based on objectivism, which is a philosophy coming from Aristotle. Plato was more into subjectivism. Now, subjectivism is more on the lines of idealism, whereas objectivism is more on the lines of, say, ideas like realism and things like that. A very slight difference, but because of those slight difference, there are different philosophies and philosophers, and they became famous. But ultimately, you realize that these thinkers and these philosophers keep on talking about whether the reality is outside or the reality is inside. When you say that reality is inside, as in idealism, the best example is they'll say that there's a forest and a fruit falls. Does a fruit fall? Those who are into realism, objectivism, etc., they will say that because nobody saw, so the fruit did not fall. We will be coming to this again when we discuss Kant. Swamiji will be discussing Immanuel Kant. Sorry. So, but then there are the idealists. They say that whether or not anybody is watching, the fruit fell. Kant was more on the idealistic side. Swamiji opposes. Swamiji says, he will be saying a sentence later, that essentially objectivism is about words and expressions. Subjectivism is all about idealism, ideas. And he says, these are one and the same. Ideas and words, these are one and the same. Those of you who have been listening to our talks and talks on different subjects, you'll find that we have been discussing this objects, ideas, and words. In Indian traditions, these three are one and the same. Here is this pen. Pen is an idea. Pen is a word. Pen is also an object. When this word is uttered, pen, the idea is formed in my mind, and we find that objectified in this pen. When it comes to knowledge, in Raj Yoga, Swamiji very clearly says, and other places also, he very clearly says that there is an object outside, it sends this suggestion, and from the knowledge bank that we have, we realize that object to be so and so. That means, although everything takes place within my brain, so ultimately it is idealism. It's all about ideas. But that idea itself was formed through some object. And when that idea wakes up, either during the dream or through memory or through imagination, it is because there was a past object, and there is mixing and intermixing of these objects and ideas, and they create havoc during our dreams. These are all fine. Swamiji is explaining all this, but when it comes to religion, it becomes dangerous. Is God an object or is he an idea? That's a very interesting thing. If there is an object, if God is an object, we can know him through our senses. And very popular idea in Hinduism is Sri Ramakrishna saw God. Sri Ramakrishna never saw God. No one can see God the way we understood seeing. And if God is not an object, can you form an idea of him? No, you cannot. Because objects and ideas, they are same. And if it's not an idea, can you give it a name? Because name is a word. Objects and ideas and words, these three are same. There's no difference. If God is not an object, he cannot be an object because he's infinite. Because he's infinite, he cannot be grasped by the mind. He's not an object. He can never be an object. Moreover, as our scriptures say, He is the eternal subject. He is the eternal witness. Because he alone exists. There is no two. So God can never be an idea. And because he is not an idea, he cannot be a word. And if he cannot be a word, how can you name him? How can you have a name of God? Can you have a name of God? No, you cannot. So if there is a religion that talks about God who is infinite and who is formless and all those things and gives a name, there cannot be a more silly idea than that. You talk about God being infinite and you also say that he has this name. So suddenly I get a brainwave. Maybe in my dream or in my thought, or maybe I might have some kind of realization. I may stumble upon some kind of truth. Maybe not the whole truth. And I may start shouting that Vishnu is God. Vishnu is God. Vishnu is the only God. Vishnu is God. And as a corollary, I say that you worship Vishnu, who is infinite, who is the one God, or I'll make you a second class citizen. Will it stand to reason? It cannot stand to reason. Why? The moment you say Vishnu is God, you are talking about Vishnu as an expression, and God, who is neither an expression nor an object nor an idea. What he is? Is pure abstraction. Abstraction is beyond all these three. Pure abstraction. Now, there's a very interesting thing. Those of you who are listening, we have 68 right now, it's showing. And I must admire your persistence that you are able to hold on to this talk. And I can only bow down my head in reverence to all of you. Because this is a difficult subject. Unless you have some training, it is difficult to hold on to this kind of talk. And there are the learned philosophers, they don't care for these things. Absolutely true. And there are the general devotees and people interested in religion. For them, this is too high. So, really, you are great. Earlier, once we had discussed about the issue of idea and abstraction. And Shankaracharya is master at it. No religion, absolutely no religion, no system of thought has succeeded in relating this idea with abstraction. So now we have four things. We have object, we have expression, that is words, and we have ideas. And here comes the fourth state. The fourth state is of abstraction. Acharya Shankar uses such a simple argument. It is as simple as it is elegant. Simplicity is a name of God. Einstein believed that God is simple and his laws in this world, in this universe, they are simple. And somebody asked him, what if it's not simple? Einstein said, then I'm not interested. And that's why he came up with E equal to mc square. It's simple, it's grand, it's elegant. So Acharya Shankar uses a very simple argument. I think I explained it earlier, and maybe we will have to come back to this again and again till it settles in the mind. So every time we think of this pen, Shankara says two ideas concerning this pen enter simultaneously. Pen is the existence of pen. Now, when there is existence of pen, even if this pen is destroyed, existence will continue to be there in some form or the other. That means this pen is gone, microphone will remain. So existence continues to be there. And if you think slightly deeply, you realize how true he was. And he says, as you go on becoming finer and finer and finer, you go to subtler level, and finally you realize that there is pure abstraction. And he called it Sat, existence, pure existence. And that pure existence is God. And then he shows through arguments how pure Sat itself is consciousness and how consciousness is pure bliss. Because we love what exists and we love what we know. At that level, when there is no knower known difference, there is pure existence. So that pure existence alone has to be consciousness. And that alone will have bliss. The bliss that we see here in the same process of objects, words, and ideas. As you proceed finer and finer, you reach that level where is that one source which is love itself, Anandam. And he says Satchidanandam. And now this concept of Satchidananda, it comes in various forms like Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, etc. So think of one undivided, absolutely undivided existence of anything. For example, there's a pen. There is that idea of pen. Now, before that idea of pen comes abstraction of pen. Supposing pen had life, supposing pen could think, it would go exactly in this same process and it would say that there has to be the idea of pain somewhere from which all other ideas have evolved. In Christian traditions, in Bible traditions, you find this idea of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, they are the ultimate of ideation of human beings, male and female. That's the ultimate. In Indian traditions, you find Manu and Shatarupa. But in Manu and Shatrupa also, ultimately there is only creator God who is Brahma. And beyond that lies pure existence. Till we have that here comes Ramesh Madan with some of his grand ideas. So I need to stop this chat. So whenever we are thinking of an individual, Brahma is the creator God. We have come down to the idea, to the level of idea and expression. Beyond that lies pure abstraction. God is not an idea. God is not an expression. God is pure abstraction. So when some religion says that God is formless, they forget to say that when they are talking about formless, they're adding a quality to that. The moment you add a quality to that, it has become an idea, it has become an expression, and now it has a name. Call it by any name. The moment you talk about Narayan, the moment you talk about Vishnu, you talk about Ram, and you can go on fighting all over the world saying that your God alone is true and that you have a right to kill others. But the truth remains the same. The moment you say that Vishnu is God, Vishnu is with a capital I and capital S, you have made the same fundamental mistake that an idolater makes. By the way, Hinduism is not an idolatrous religion. Hindus see those idols, these forms, as masked to the infinite. We will discuss it again. So these are the three states. There is this object, word, idea, and abstraction. The problem is that because we live in this world of mind, however great your mind be, even if you reach the level of Brahma, if you reach the level of cosmic mind, in yoga they say that through meditation you keep on growing till you become one with the cosmic mind. Even then, you cannot think of the abstract. If you want to think of the abstract, you will have to become one with the abstract, because in abstraction there are no two. How difficult it is? Here we have this pen whose cap is blue, as you can see. There will be shades of blue, and you can mix this blue with different colors to come up with different shades. As you go backward, you reach blue color, and when you go further back, you reach, you can say, idea of blueness, or it might be abstraction of blueness. Now when we talk about abstraction of blueness, can we think of it? No, we cannot. When we say God is infinite, can we really think of infinite? Swamiji says beautifully that every time we say the word infinite, we think of the huge sky, we think of the huge ocean. Because not we, anyone in this universe, wherever that person might be he the highest gods like Indra and all, may he be Brahma and all, no one can ever think of infinite. Infinite is abstraction. And to know that infinite, you have to become one with the infinite. That's the problem. You have to become one with the infinite. Sri Ramakrishna tells it beautifully that there was a doll of salt. It went to measure the ocean and it merged in the ocean. There will never be two. There will be only one. So saints like Kabir Das and all, they wrote beautiful poems on this, where he says that love is such that there are not two. There's only one. I-ness and God, these two cannot go together, because God is not an idea. If you were an idea, you could have two ideas. Like blueness is there. With blueness, you can have redness, you can have greenness, and you can combine them. The problem is that there are religions who come up with anti of God, something like Satan and all. So now God is no more abstraction. But the fact is, God is absolutely abstract. Anything that belongs to your mind. There's sometimes people say that God is energy. How can God be energy? At the highest level, energy becomes idea. It's not an abstraction. Because if it were abstraction, mind will not be able to think of it. So the problem is that whenever we want to think of that abstraction, we need a model for it. We need to put a mask on it. How do we put that mask? Now, we Indians are masters of spirituality, no doubt about it. I mean, no land, no religion can ever come anywhere near Hinduism when it comes to different aspects of religion. There's nothing in the religious world, at least till date, that Hinduism has not explored. Hinduism has explored every facet of religion. So what Hindus did was, they gave different attributes, different names, and also different forms as mask of the infinite. And that's why we have all these gods. These gods who have different attributes, these gods who have different forms, and God have different names. So when people of Semitic religions, Abrahamic religions, they come and criticize us, while they themselves talk about abstraction without understanding what abstraction is, and they say that we are idol worshippers, they forget the fundamental thing that when they are talking about their abstract God, they themselves are giving some kind of mask to it. In Islam, there are 99 names of Allah. They're all based on attributes. The moment you make attributes, now attribute has come. The ultimate of abstraction is no more there. Is that wrong? No way. It's perfectly right. That is how it is done. There is no way. See, Once I met one elderly gentleman, he had done business all his life, and he said that he is now into Advaita. Advaita. At this age, Advaita. Can one practice Advaita? Is it possible? Shankaracharya can practice, Swamiji can practice, but you, is it possible? Our mind can live only with phantasms. Even in darkness, we see ghosts. Just like that, in our mind, there are ghosts, ghosts, and ghosts. Whenever we think of something, when we think of a pen, when we think of a cow, we think of a horse, that ghost gets awakened. And these ghosts, they're not real, they're phantasms. They're mere ideas associated with words living in our mind. And whenever we think of it or whenever we see something, those ghosts get awakened. This is what Swamiji says. To try to think without a phantasm is to try to make the impossible possible. It's just impossible. You can't do it. And we are thinking that we are making it possible. And he gives that example of mammalia. So that species, if you want to think of species, you have to think of the individual. When you just say cow, we can say cow. If you have seen a cow, if you remember many of the cows, suddenly one of them will spring up. Forget about abstraction. We can't even think of an idea. We just can't think of an idea. The idea itself needs a phantasm. So, well, the great abstraction of ideas in the world is what we call God. You can go on. You can go on making an idea as abstract as possible. As abstract as, for example, love. The ultimate of love is an idea that has become abstract. The great abstraction of ideas is God. And then Swamiji goes to explain what exactly what we had been discussing. Each thought has two parts, the thinking and the word, and we must have both. Now, this is where Swamiji takes the Hindu line of thought that anyone who thinks of only expression, think word, only word, he makes the mistake. And those who focus only on the ideas, only on the thinking, they also make me a mistake. Because there can never be a thought without a word. When Patanjali in his Raj Yoga says that Om represents God, and repetition of Om and meditating on its meaning. So when Patanjali talks about this, when Guru gives you a mantra, he gives you a mantra something like Om Namah Shivaya. You are supposed to utter those words because as you utter those words, Om Namah Shivaya, it gets imprinted in your mind. It becomes more and more concrete. As you meditate on Om Namah Shivaya, you give up the external form of word and slowly it starts entering you and you start becoming one with the idea of what Shiva is and what Om Namah means. Shiva. Shiva is that great mask on that infinite Satchidananda. And when you say Om, that same idea is being repeated. And when you say Namah, essentially you are talking about yourself, you worshipping that. And starting from the crudest form of worship, which is like Om Namah Shiva, is like a mantra where you are repeating, and you will find that if you go to any of these Shiva temples, you'll find devotees chanting aloud. Hara Hara Bam 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 Bole Om Namah Shivaya. These are mere words for them. Because if these were ideas, their life would change. If someone is talking about Advaita and still practicing dualism, there's something seriously fraud about him. Serious fraud about him. Because When you utter a word, it will carry weight only if it is accompanied by the corresponding idea. And corresponding idea, if it enters you, it will change your life forever. The best example is fire. Fire is a mere word. But any kid who knows fire knows not to put his finger in that fire. Every kid, he must have burned his fingers at some point of time. And once he knows what fire is, kid is never going to put his finger in that fire. This is the true meaning of word and fire. Under normal conditions, an object is a mere word. And once it enters our head as an idea, truly as an idea, because we don't see objectification of many things. For example, there is love. We don't find objectification of love. We catch hold of someone and we say that, well, I love you, without understanding anything. And their love is a mere word. Neither there is an object for love, nor is there the idea of love. But once that idea comes, you go silent. Tears roll down your cheeks from the eyes. If you chance to read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will come across many occasions when Sri Ramakrishna is talking about the love of gopis for Sri Krishna. And he gets immersed in that thought. And then you find tears streaming from the end of his eyes. Tears are streaming. This is love. If love does not make you shed tears, not the idea of separation, but of fulfillment, that's the problem. When we suffer in love, we are actually experiencing dejection. We are not experiencing love. And sometimes, when someone gets an award, coveted award, and supposing his mom is there in the audience, she starts shedding tears. That's sheer joy. Sometimes we ask us, some news breaks and our eyes become moist. That is fulfillment. Fulfillment is expected to create such emotions, such turmoil within your heart that tears have to come out of these two windows. If they don't, then you have not experienced love. You have not experienced fulfillment. Just like that, everything that we do is a mere word, just a word. Long ago, when I was pretty young, I was talking to one of my senior monks, and I was talking about all this devotion and all. And he said, look, God is a mere word for you, so don't talk much. I was hurt by this statement. Well, God is still a word for me. It's not that easy to reach up to the idea of God. It's not that easy. People keep on asking questions, and Katopnisha said, Andhe naiv niyamana yathanda. The teacher is blind, and his disciples are also blind. Blind leading the blind. That's why I don't reply to these things, because I know I'm blind. I only explain scriptures. Because if you become one with the idea of God, your eyes will always remain brimmed with tears. Sri Ramakrishna describes that in Gospel many times. One sign of progress in devotion, progress in spiritual life, is that tears remain moist. Now, this is what Swamiji says, that when we are in this world and when we are thinking of God too, ideas and expressions, they have to go hand in hand. The philosophers who follow objectivism and philosophers who follow realism, they make this mistake. They think that it's either expression or it's idea. No, it's not that. Both go hand in hand. In true spirituality, the goal of true spirituality is Advaita, to reach that level of abstraction from where all the ideas flow down. But to reach that, initially you need objects. Objects means things like, say, idols. You come to Belur Math and you find the living form of Sri Ramakrishna there in the form of statue. You worship that, you meditate on that, and you use words. And as you use words, you take his name more and more and more. That statue form of Sri Ramakrishna goes away. And in that place comes Sri Ramakrishna, the living. It actually happens. Until this happens, your spiritual life has not yet begun. The moment you can feel the living Sri Ramakrishna within your heart, you have reached the level of ideas. So from the objects, through words, you have reached idea. And now from there, you need to make the final jump to reach abstraction. I hope I'm not elaborating things too much. I'll just wait. Please confirm. Am I elaborating too much? Yes, no, say something. Oh my God. So many. Vairagya Vidya, I don't answer any questions. If you want to know answer to any question, please send us mail. Now, what is the email ID? Please check our previous talks. Email ID is given. I don't even read all these comments. And that we are having English talk and you're writing long Bengali comments. Now, Kalyan Boro says more elaboration required. It's amazing. Now, what more elaboration you require? It's like cooked food served to you. You want me to take that food in spoon and feed inside your mouth. Even that will not do. I need to digest that too for you. If you did not understand Kalyan Boro, please listen to this talk once again and it will become clear. Okay, here we stop and we proceed. And then Swamiji comes to another idea of his, which he talks about at many places. And this is again, not his original idea. This is the primary theme of Vedanta, primary theme of Advaita. We just mentioned how there is Satchidananda. That which exists alone is consciousness. So now when I become conscious of this pain, I must be that Satchidananda. Because otherwise I cannot be conscious of it. I'm conscious of this. Now I'm sitting in this recording room. And there are mosquitoes biting me. I'm becoming conscious of that pain, that bite. Just now we saw how when we hold on to objects, move through words to ideas and to abstraction, we come up with pure abstraction, which is also known as consciousness. It's such a simple argument. And yet we know that we are becoming conscious. Western science nowadays is obsessed with the idea of consciousness. And they can never understand consciousness. I have some friends in psychiatry department. So one of my very good friends, he was organizing one seminar on consciousness, studies in consciousness. I said, I'm just not interested because you people don't understand anything. And that's why there is total mess in understanding consciousness. And we solved this issue long ago. How? Through pure reasoning and through a very clear and clean intuitive knowledge. When Sri Ramakrishna went into Samadhi and he realized that it's all conscious, And when he touched Swami Vivekananda at that time, Narendranath Datta, who was making a mockery of this Advaita knowledge, he just touched him. And now Narendranath could see everything conscious. And he even saw those iron rods near his house. It is still there, Hedua Park. He knew that these are iron railings. And he hit his head against those railings. And his head was hurt. And yet, he was seeing it as pure consciousness. And that way, he did not attain it through samadhi, but by mere touch of Sri Ramakrishna, which means this is not something, an impossible state. You can really see it, you can really see. So we have this intuitive knowledge of consciousness. We also have reasoning from Shankaracharya, which Swamiji also comes up with such reasoning at different places in different way. The problem is these Western thinkers and philosophers, neither they have the due respect nor due patience to understand this ancient wisdom. They will keep on moving in the whirlpool of Abrahamic religion. God created the world and there was Adam and Eve, and from there, even Newton, such a great person, he went on calculating when this universe came into existence, and it was 4032 BC, 4000 BC. That means 6000 years from now. Our Vedas were created much before that. So how do you relate that consciousness with this consciousness? Here begins a very serious problem. For the non-Advaitins, that includes persons like Ramanuja and Madhvacharya in Indian traditions, and the entire Western religion, Abrahamic religions, or West Asian religions, you can say, which moved on to, say, Europe and America and everywhere. They may talk about impersonal God. They may talk about one God. They may talk about God who cannot be named, like Jehovah. Ultimately, they are dualists, where God and these are different. The same way as Madhvacharya in India did. Or Ramanuja tried to strike a balance, and he came up with his Vishishta Dvaita, which was neither Dvaita and nor Dvaita. I have many friends listening here who are from Vishishta Dvaita. They get mad at me when I speak like this. For them, this consciousness is also true. Because in Upanishads also they talk about the huge fire and the sparks flying out of it. Upanishads are talking about it. So was Ramanuja wrong? Absolutely no, he was absolutely correct, because the Vedas do mention of these sparks. But as we saw in that reasoning which we had, that how ultimately only existence remains, and that existence has to be consciousness, and that is bliss. It simply means that this consciousness can under no condition be different from that consciousness. Now, when the Upanishads use the example of the huge fire and the sparks, where is the problem? The problem lies that fire and sparks, these are in the physical world. So they are objects. When it comes to objects, they will always be different. So when this kind of example is used, maybe by Madhvacharya or Ramanujacharya or dualists, they are great people. I tell you, they are really prophets. And we have no right to talk about, and I have not even studied them in detail. I just have a very, very, very superficial knowledge of that. But I can understand what they mean to say. Whenever they are quoting from the Upanishads and the Vedas and the Puranas, they tend to overlook the fact that the examples used in the Upanishads, etc., these are from this world, and this world has only objects. And whenever there are objects, there will be separation. You can go on connecting these separations. But ultimately, if you want to understand the thing, you will have to go beyond objects. You will have to go beyond words. You will have to even go beyond ideas and reach abstraction. This is Advaita. So what about this consciousness? The obvious conclusion is that this consciousness has to be a reflected consciousness. The way we see our reflection in a mirror, there is absolutely no way out. It cannot be that God is there and the soul is separate from God. This cannot be that this soul and God, they are related the way a tree and its leaves are connected, as Ramanuja would have us believe. For a devotee, it's all right. I have my Easter. I take his name. I worship him. Every morning I go and lie prostrate before him. Because Swamiji said, to try to think without a phantasm, I need a phantasm. The moment you say that, when you are thinking of Sri Ramakrishna as a phantasm, you are committing sacrilege. No, I am not committing sacrilege. Because this entire universe is a phantasm. Existence, which is an idea, which is an abstract idea, existence, that itself needs a phantasm, which is universe. Mind is an idea. It needs a phantasm, which we call brain. We just cannot live without phantasm. It's just not possible. There's no way out. And yet, when you go on analyzing deep, you realize that this phantasm cannot be true. Abstraction has to be the truth. So everything that we are conscious of, so consciousness and being conscious of, these are two different things. Science focuses on being conscious of. We talk about pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is not an idea, it's an abstract thing. The gentleman who was writing about an object is surrounded by light. The moment you're talking about light, it's not even an idea, you made it an object. And you're trying to prove that that object is God. I mean, where from they get these ideas? They don't even sit for a minute silently to think of what they are talking. Actually, most philosophers are like that. Most philosophers, and even of the greatest philosopher, the outpourings are mostly undigested vomits. When the cow eats the grass, it gives some milk. It also gives cow dung. Every philosopher will give some milk and some cow dung, and they will be mixed. Not Vedanta. It gives pure milk. It doesn't give any cow dung. It leaves the Puranas to supply that cow dung. I mean, it supplies the entire cow. Go, have the entire cow. You have the cow dung and you have grass and you have this and that. All knowledge is of the reflected. So when we know that, when we are becoming conscious, it's about reflection. That Sat, that God, it gets reflected in the empire of mind. That empire of mind is his own power. And that reflection. Just imagine you enter a room of mirrors. Just imagine. You enter a room of mirrors. There is a large mirror, and there are smaller mirrors. There are concave mirrors, convex mirrors, this mirror, that. Think of that. You alone exist. Now what happens? You have your reflections. Now supposing, just imagine, those reflections have some kind of consciousness. Naturally, the larger one will say, I am greater than all of you, and I am greater than all of you put together. Or think of just a wall where there's a huge mirror and there are smaller mirrors of the various kinds. And then all these reflections, they think that they have their individuality. Actually, they don't have any individuality. The individuality lies with the person whose reflection is there in the mirror. This mind is that great reflector. It's God being reflected as matter. God is being reflected as human beings. God is being reflected as the snakes and the evil person and everything. When we know something, our mind gets into the act. Now imagine those reflections in the mirror, they have limited power to come out and see, and they will be seeing all those reflections, and they cannot see this side. It's just not possible. And one of those mirrors break, then what happens? Nothing happens. Other mirrors continue. So what happened to that mirror? Nothing. What happened to that image? Sorry, what happened to that reflection? Nothing. It never was true. Even now it is not true. And why others continue to be there? Because mirror will be there. Once this mirror, me, gets broken down, not death minded, death of that great mirror, that mind, the mind that is ultimately Samarpanananda. It breaks, I am free. What is the meaning of freedom? Nothing. In reality, you never existed. This is what Vedanta is. In reality, you never existed. All your tears and all your smiles, all your birth, all your death, all your happiness, all your misery, they're all phantasms. They're all created by you. Because the real one, it does nothing. And if you can somehow make that mirror move with those hundreds and thousands of those small mirrors, it will have motion, it will have this, it will have that. Nothing moves, nothing goes. The real remains real. That alone exists. Now, when I use this example, don't try to find this and that through that. It's just an analogy to make you understand. As we can only see our face in a mirror, no one will ever know his own self or God, but we are that own self. We are God. We are watching that reflection and we are enamored by that. And we forget that we are watching our own reflection. We forget that we are God. It's such a profound statement, and it can sound such sacrilegious that even a person like Madhvacharya and our Ramanujacharya, they condemned Advaita for that. But this is the fact. So our time is over. We need to end here. We'll come up next week from here, where Swami talks about how Gautam Buddha looked at Nirvana. Thank you so much.